All right. Good evening, everyone. It's welcome to the January 4th Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting. To call this meeting to order. Happy New Year, and I will go ahead and read our opening statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GLC 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28, or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public hearings, please email your question or comment prior to or during the meeting to ashapiro@northandoverma.gov. ashapiro@northandoverma.gov. The question comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. All right. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
You too.
Andrew, did we have any public comments come in since the last meeting?
So taking another look now to see if anything's come in. No, nothing.
There you go. No hot topics yet. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Let's do something controversial.
All right. So then the next item on our agenda, if there's no public comments, was approval of the minutes from December 8th.
Move to approve the minutes from our December 8th, 2000 meeting.
I will second that.
All right.
Who
So
is
now
the-
I have-
Who was the second?
Jay?
Oh, Jay. Thanks, Jay.
All right. So I'm going to do roll call vote. Stan,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
All right, I'm looking. Kelly is yes. Who I missed? Is it Sean?
Yeah.
Yep,
Sean.
Sean's here. Sean's here via telephone, and if somebody will let me into the Google meeting, I'll be able to get in that way as well.
Sean, are you in like a waiting room or something?
I am. It says asking to join. You'll join the call when someone lets you in.
Huh.
Uh-oh, back to the waiting room.
Yep.
Oh my
All right.
God. Why
Todd,
that
are
is
you
happening?
signing in with the same email address that you were invited to the meeting with? Or do you have two
Yes,
different emails?
I just clicked on the link.
I don't
Okay.
see a waiting room. All right. Well, while Andrew's figuring out the waiting room, Sean, would you mind? I was doing roll call for approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Can you give us your vote for if you approve on the minutes?
Approved.
All right. There you go then. All right. Andrew, do you need a second to figure out the waiting room, or should we keep going?
You can keep going. I am trying to figure that out, but you go ahead and keep going. I'm
Okay.
keeping my eye on both.
All right. So we have two main agenda items for the group today. One, for the committee one is in having the conversations around starting to dig in on the elements, the strategies. It became obvious we just want to make sure we have a discussion on who gets to decide. The master plan implementation committee, how do we make the decision on when we mark something in progress or done, probably more importantly, just to make sure all of us kind of go, how is that going to happen? Just want to have a discussion about that before we hop into item number 5 on the agenda, which is debriefing each other on some of the element meetings that happened. I know George and I met with Dan, Andrew, and Jean on land use. Meredith and Stan, you guys met as well on public facilities. So just want to kind of brief out to everybody else on the committee to make sure we're all on kind of working off the same information. So back to item number 4 on how do we kind of formally say, at least from our kind of purview as the master plan implementation committee, say when a strategy is done. Maybe just have a discussion about it and see what anybody else thinks. And going through as part of with the land use elements, and then talking with gathering all the information from Andrew and Jean and Dan and getting the viewpoint on that. It became, there were some of them that I felt pretty comfortable, or one in particular, I felt pretty comfortable saying and coming back to the committee, being able to say, this is done. I think this is done, and we can get into the specifics, on why. And I think it was Andrew, you brought up the point of, well, is that something for the land use element sub-team to decide, or does the whole committee decide? I would suggest, and this is what I would like to hear what everybody else thinks, is kind of if we want to call it a subcommittee, but the element subcommittee makes the determination whether a particular strategy is done or not, and then as a group we discuss it, and if there's any open comments or questions, we work to resolve and answer them as a team, but that decision is made by the element sub-team. I think we have 2 or 3 on each of the elements. I don't know. Just kind of trying to keep it simple, kind of keep, we seem to we're different groups are driving in on their different elements. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that, or anyone else has a different idea or a better approach.
Kelly, I think that makes sense to me. I think if each of our element subcommittees thought that one of their strategies was done, we could bring it back to the whole committee. And I suppose we'd want to give a little presentation as to why we thought it was done to the committee, and then let people ask questions. And then if everybody agreed or concurred that they thought it was done, then we could mark it done and report it out as such. So that makes sense to me, actually. I don't think it has to get too complicated. And I think we have to rely on our subcommittees to do the sort of the detailed work, and then we have to trust them, and that they think if they think it's done, and they explain to us why, then we should be good. So I like the idea.
And
This is Chris here. I would also say I think it's really important from a kind of historical perspective to document the steps and kind of where we were, because I think one of the big challenges with such a huge scope project is getting mired going backwards sometimes. And by sort of saying, hey, we've crossed this bridge, or we've evaluated that, it just helps us keep momentum. And I think that's another value to doing it like this.
Chris, can you say a little bit more about what you mean when you say document? Like minutes of discussions, or what sort of things are you thinking?
Well, I think, minutes is probably fine. I don't think we have to get, as you say, too sophisticated with this, but something that sort of says, there's a check off to it. Maybe it's something as simple as that, kind of a sheet just saying, hey, we've done this, check, check, check. But I think it helps us as a committee, and also helps the message to the public. Hey, here's the ground that we've covered. Here's what your master plan implementation committee has done or is doing. I think that helps people see the momentum.
Yes, I agree.
Anyone not have a different approach, or think this one maybe has to be something different, but thinks this isn't the right approach?
This is Sean. I don't necessarily think it's the wrong approach because I don't have a better one. But when all of us, so we are a committee of God knows how many, and really 2 people are assigned to each subcommittee. Each subcommittee has such a broad range of responsibilities that, let's say the rail trail, for instance. Let's say I said, hey, the rail trail's done. It's 100 feet long. You guys would be like, what, are you kidding me, Sean? A 100-foot long rail trail is not what this committee was hoping to get here. The master plan is expecting a lot more, right? Well, listen, Holly and I decide it's done, so it's done. Not that we would ever have that kind of dialogue, but it is the silliness that makes us kind of ponder these questions. So I just have that, I don't know if you call it reluctance or hesitancy, but just that thought.
Well, Sean, I think that's the reason why you have to bring it, each of our subcommittees will have to bring it back to the whole committee and make a little pitch. And if you and Holly brought that back to all of us and said, hi, we think the rail trail's done. It's 10 feet, looks good, we like it. We would all say, no, I don't think so. And unless you could get concurrence from us, I don't think it's done yet. You're right. I don't think. Good. So I think that's what we're all about. We're sort of like the Supreme Court, the other 7 of us are the 6 or 7 of us are yeah, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense. Maybe we need to do some more work on that. So I agree. We could get these ideas that maybe it is done, but not everybody might agree with that.
This is George, and I think that's just sort of the classic way a committee works. The committee has subcommittees. Subcommittees dig in and then they make recommendations, but it goes before the whole committee, and the whole committee decides whether or not it's going to accept that recommendation. And that's what you're saying, Stan.
Right.
Yes. I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood the proposal. I thought it was just that the subcommittee was going to make the determination that it was complete versus the entire committee.
I would call it a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say the whole committee has to concur that it's done, Sean. And the subcommittees would make the recommendation that this particular strategy is done. Like, for example, Kelly may have an example. You, George, and Kelly may have an example of a done strategy, right?
Putting us on the spot there. All right, so what we're talking about, subcommittees recommend, the group challenges or concurs. Do we need to vote on it, or can we get away without doing a vote? I just want to know, do we have to do something like that, Jean? Or Andrew, or can we just, the group agrees, we market something? What do we, is it up to us, or what do we have to do?
What do you think, Jean? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. Like, I'm not trying to add in an extra layer here, but just want to know what we're doing.
From my understanding of the open meeting law, yes, there has to be a vote and it has to be recorded in the minutes.
So Kelly, to play it forward a little bit, I would anticipate that you're going to agree to these recommendations or disagree, but at some point they're going to go down in your quarterly report to the selectmen and the planning board, and I would expect that you're going to motion on that report, which would contain these type of discussions within it. So I think by that motion, you're motioning that for your specific example, you have one, you think it's concluded, everybody agrees it's concluded, you're going to create a report that updates the status of goals, and that one's going to say completed, and then you're going to motion on the report. Just my thought.
Okay, so we could get away with just motioning to the report because that contains the content.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so unless anyone disagrees, I think what I'm hearing, right, is the element subcommittees will make the recommendation, and we're talking about status, but it could be other things, but you're making recommendations about that strategy. The group will discuss it, concur, hopefully get to concur, maybe disagree, but get to that point of concurrence, and that will get, I don't remember the word, it wasn't voted, but it'll get documented or kind of contained when we capture it in our quarterly reports to the planning board and selectmen. And that will be
down as a consent item, most likely.
Item. Okay.
Consent item to vote your, whatever you're going to call your report to the planning board and board of selectmen, select board.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Any questions or comments or concerns about that? That seems like we're all pretty much aligned. Just wanted to kind of understand how we were going to shake it out.
Okay. All good.
All right. So then to get to some more interesting stuff, I know at least 2 of the element subgroups met with the appropriate town committees. I know George and I met with on land use, and Stan and Meredith met on public facilities. Was there any other meetings that happened to go over those initial priorities?
Holly, I don't know if you're on the line, but Holly and I met with Mr. Gorman.
All right, awesome. So you got the youth. What's the element? Is that youth services?
It is. It's improvements to the youth center.
Okay.
And also one of the elements that wasn't number 1 or 2 on our list, but was pretty high up was the town fields and supporting them and improving them and
Okay,
getting
awesome.
more. Obviously, he was a very big proponent of all that stuff. But he gave us some really good insights as far as where we are with fields and what we need, and with the new work being done over between the middle school in that area and how that will impact the town and what still might be left afterwards. So it was useful in a lot of regards.
All right, awesome. John, I saw you raised your hand. Did you meet as
Yeah,
well?
Meredith, Jay, and I met with Andrew, DPW, and engineering department this morning to
Okay.
go over all the transportation items.
All right, awesome. So you had 1, 2, 3, 4 of the element subgroups meet.
Yep.
That's great. So this next one is just reporting out. So the element subgroups reporting back out to the larger team. In terms of ways to kind of capture this, Stan ever so nicely volunteered, thank you, to keep being sort of the maintainer of the spreadsheet, a temporary maintainer of the spreadsheet and data. So as we go through and have information about the strategies, whether it's kind of the status, in progress, completed, done, or any kind of major bullets that we want to make sure we capture, we just need to make sure that we're feeding that information to Stan, and he's gonna help us corral that, and that will really then be our source of kind of master data for the plan strategies.
So what I imagine us all doing, and I haven't done it yet, but I will have to do that, is for each of the discussions that we have as a subcommittee, we would document them in some abbreviated form, like minutes of a meeting, with the standard stuff, who was in the discussion, the date, the venue. I assume most of these will all be Zoom discussions. So, and then you could send that to me, and you could also include with that the status, which would be for most everything we're probably working on right now, like in progress, right? We're working on it. We haven't gotten it done. We won't be as lucky as George and Kelly to have one that's done already. Yes. But I think you cheated because you picked one that was already done and you knew that, right? So you were just smart. Yeah. Knowing how to cheat is an important thing.
We didn't cheat. We just read.
Yeah. So if you send them to me, I'm going to try to come up with a way to both summarize and document sort of what we're doing here. It's sort of like you were saying, Chris, to sort of keep a record of this so that we and anyone else can go back and look and say, how did you get to the as Kelly pointed out, the done decision? How did you get there? What were the steps and how did that go? So that's my proposal. And I think once we have some of these meetings and we start to collect this information, and when we organize it, then maybe we'll see the best way to do that and can make it into some kind of a process, and somebody can just do it on a routine basis. But I think it's going to take a little bit for us to figure that out. So if you just want to, as you do your meetings, so we have like 4 examples here. If someone were to send me, if you will, meeting minutes or discussion minutes from all of those, I'd start to try to organize those in some fashion, and we can sort of take it from there. So,
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think, and just thinking too, you might be able to use the meetings for the meeting minutes from this meeting too. I don't know, as part of the the notes as well. So as we're discussing them, right? That might be an easy way to already have them typed, when they get transcribed and typed up. I don't know. All right, so we've got land use, public facilities, open space and recreation, and transportation for the groups to report out on. Anybody want to volunteer to go first? How your meetings went?
You go first since you have a done one.
All right, there we go then. I was hoping not to have to go first. I'll be honest, I wasn't all shiny and prepared. All right, so land use, George and I met with Dan, Andrew, and Jean last week. It's all a little fuzzy with Christmas cookies and lights. We had 3 strategies, and if everybody remembers, we took we took our lower hanging fruit items was our approach on the list. The first one, our first strategy that we looked at that we had ranked number 1 was reviewing the Osgood Smart Growth Overlay District and update the zoning bylaw to ensure the district encourages the types of uses that are attractive in today's market and consistent with the direction of this master plan. I'll get to the end of the story first. We're comfortable that this one is done. For a couple of reasons. This was something that actually had started a while ago in May, and I'm reading off of Andrew's very helpful notes here. So I'm going to give Andrew credit for providing the write-up. But in May of 2019, in the town meeting, we voted the population to rescind the Osgood Smart Overlay Growth, the Osgood Smart Growth Overlay District back at that point, based on what we needed. And then in June of 2019, we had the special town meeting to approve several zoning bylaw amendments to move forward, really focusing on Hillwood, Amazon coming in, and continuing to make those changes needed. And then in annual town meeting again, in last year, we approved to sign the master plan. Approved the sign master plan within I2 by special permit. So we've really kind of completed what needed to be done here in terms of what was in the master plan strategy. The one bit of discussion that we had with this and decided it was part of a different element was the town was recently awarded a $50,000 a grant from the Mass Development from its Real Estate Technical Assistance Program to look at and produce work around the corridor of Route 125 between Sutton and Haverhill to look at current land uses and zonings. That while that is still ongoing, that is captured under a separate element within economic strategy. So we're considering that while at first we had that one kind of captured within here, we feel that is separate and would be good that work will be caught under another strategy. So felt that this one could be done.
That's under economic development?
What did we I have to go back and find it. I don't have noted exactly which one it is. We had talked about it. I think Dan, you had found one, and I can't see what I see, but we found it listed. It was in one of the other elements. So we'll find that.
Kelly, I meant to look this up and I haven't. I think can this meeting move on and you and I will agree on what element contains it, and we'll identify it, and it can be included in the minutes. Is that acceptable?
Yeah. When you're done with your speech, Kelly.
That's it. I'm done.
I think the main thing also is that this strategy we thought pertained or applied only to 1600 Osgood, and with the rescission of the smart growth overlay and with the plan for Amazon, there's really not. The town doesn't really need to take a strategic look at that property. We're kind of baked into a certain process going forward.
Yeah,
and we don't interpret the strategy to include all of Route 125. That's in another strategy.
So there is the other strategy is undertake a series of area plans for key commercial and mixed use nodes to establish desired visions and outcomes for each location and craft zoning to implement those desired outcomes. And that's strategy number 7 in land use.
Oh, in land use number 7. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So captured somewhere else. So that piece of ongoing work. Okay.
And just for the record, I see Holly Williams has joined us.
Happy New Year, Holly. So is there any kind of questions from the group on this one? Any more, any questions or discussion or anything anyone on the committee have before we call this one done?
I'm good. No, sounds good.
All right. So like we said, we're not going to take a vote on this, but but where our consent items will come in is when we show the status on the quarterly report.
Right.
That's when we'll all give vote on consent. All right. So the next one that we talked about under land use was create a new base zoning district for downtown North Andover that is consistent with the goals of the master plan and encourages and incentivizes reinvestment. This one is in progress. Obviously, a high priority, and the downtown improvement master planning project is going on now. I know many the group has gone to those meetings and part in getting involved. That is going on now. That is kind of the first step to doing this and making sure that the zoning aligns. As Jean pointed out, that this process, the downtown improvement master plan, the downtown improvement master planning process will it's not going to deliver kind of the zoning changes, but what it will is provide what are the types of zoning change recommendations that the consultant thinks we would need to make in order to make sure that our zoning aligns with whatever the master plan comes up with. So there'll still be more work to do once this process, the downtown improvement master planning process, is done. But that needs to happen first, so then any of the zoning changes can get crafted, and that will be a normal town effort. But the process currently going on will play a big part in advising on that.
I'm just curious. What is the schedule for that downtown master planning process, or that?
First half of this year is what I see in Andrew's notes.
Are they supposed to deliver something sometime with? Andrew, hello.
Jean, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, we hope that it's concluded within the first half of this year. So we held the public hearing December 2nd. We anticipated hopefully one by the end of January, having the third public hearing. With the holidays, the consultant just hasn't gotten back to us yet as to whether that's going to be the case, but if not by the end of January, certainly early February. And then from there, we'll start crafting. I think they'll move towards kind of solidifying the 3 public hearings into a report format.
Nice.
Just for master plan we're referring to, is that the plan that's being done by Beta for the redevelop for the infrastructure improvements, or is there an overriding master plan for that entire area beyond that?
No, it's the downtown improvement master plan is what we're referring to. In addition to infrastructure, there's streetscape, there's some other components that I anticipate, but trail networks, things like that as well.
And John, and that's why this will not deliver that project will not deliver the zoning changes. That's why, but it will inform. So then there will certainly be work to do in order to decide and then enact on any zoning changes and make them happen. But that process will inform as it goes along. All right. So that one we would just say was in progress. That was our second priority when we looked at these. And then our third, the one we ranked third in land use, is review the current zoning bylaw and compare the current regulations to the desired vision and goals of the master plan. So a big one. Ensure recommendations that can be tied back to zoning changes are identified, prioritized, and completed. Right, in talking with this one, this really, as I said, is a large one. It's going to be an ongoing strategy as things change, as new projects come to the table. And it's currently, as needed, it is getting worked. Jean brought, for the very large and important example that's happening right now is, the town working along any potential zoning changes required for Royal Crest redevelopment. That's ongoing. So this is one that obviously is in progress. I think it'll be interesting to hear as people get into others and start talking about other strategies, if there's other items on this list that people feel will be ongoing for a very long time or or just sort of a continuous process. But this one I would certainly say it aligns to the priority that we gave it, and is ongoing and started.
Jean, remind me, when the concurrent with the master plan, wasn't there a review of all our zoning bylaws?
There wasn't. It was
Oh.
initially, there was a plan for that, and there was a stakeholder meeting associated with it. But the direction we went in is we recodified the old one. So I don't know if you remember, but general code took our old bylaw, recodified it, and that was accepted at a, I think 2018 town meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
online and easier accessible, but we did not get kind of the whole rework of the bylaw.
Okay, so when you say recodify, that sounds like sort of more like reorganize rather than change. Is that
Yeah,
right?
essentially it made it a online document that is searchable, and they repaginated, I would say, for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, content didn't change other than we found things that, believe it or not, had kind of dropped out of our bylaw. Most of it was associated with like auto stations. So there were things that had dropped out that we could prove that that's just over the years things happened. And so we got some of that content back into the bylaw, but for the vast majority of the recodification was not to change anything.
All right. Any other questions? If not, that ends my land use song and dance.
Okay. Are we
All
good?
right.
I guess,
So
Kelly,
then-
if I could just add, the other part of our conversation there was, there's also just, kind of bylaw revisions that are a little bit more under the radar, but still a town meeting process. And so on the planning board agenda tomorrow night, the homeowner of 187 Turnpike Street, which is, I think, a 15,000 square foot parcel across from Burger King, and zone business 4, yet it's used as a residence, and she's having trouble selling her house as a residence, and that anybody that is interested wants some type of use that is not in B4. And so she's coming for a discussion with the planning board. My expectation is the planning board's not going to look at her one tiny parcel. It's going to look at the vast, intersection there where there's numerous B4 parcels that are all 12, 15,000 square feet around the Burger King location. And it includes the Eagle Tribune lot, which of course is a much larger lot. And so there's 17 parcels in town that are B4. And if you just simply add uses to this one little parcel to try to suit her need, you affect all 17. And so what they will do is look at, is B4 the right zoning? Should we change the zoning from B4 to some other type of business, or should we change the uses that are allowed? And I would anticipate they're going to look at it more comprehensively than her one isolated lot. So that's just kind of normal routine process in terms of trying to align the bylaw with other things that are in the master plan, like reworking Route 114 and making it more user-friendly and business-friendly.
Interesting.
All right. Any other comments or thoughts on land use before we move on to one of the others? All right. So we got public facilities, open space and recreation, transportation. Who wants to go next?
Meredith, do you want to speak to our meeting with Deanna?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just had to get off mute. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, we only focused on we met with Deanna, and I don't have her title written down in front of me any longer. I apologize. But obviously she's got a lot on her shoulders. And really went through everything that she's doing as it pertains to the wellness within the community, the opioid crisis and seniors and just domestic issues, et cetera. She's really spanning a large amount. She completely recognizes in the current climate, while she could definitely use more resources, more capacity, more help. What we really pivoted back to, probably the starting point to assist her, would be seeing if we could rally some support around getting her an intern, some type of ability to start giving her support to capture the data that further measures the breadth and depth of what she's doing, both in terms of quantity, effort, and even kind of how to qualify the various parts of the community that she's affecting and collaborating, bringing all the different school, fire, police, all the senior, all the different organizations together. That would really give her the power to create a really, I think, a compelling, measurable story that could then be at a future date be leveraged to discuss, the opportunity for more actual, maybe like financial spend in that space, ranging from needing a car, and again, just needing more horsepower, just needing somebody other than just her manning it all. Stan, I mean, obviously, everything that I missed, please chime in.
Well, I think it was interesting to me because I think this is a good example of how the committee needs to be thinking about how do we help these various groups. Are we advocates? Is that what we do? We go to, we advocate, Chris Nobley. Do we advocate to the select board for more resources, or, what do we do when we find these situations? What is our role, depending on what we identify in these discussions? And so I think that's going to probably be an ongoing discussion for a while too. But I think certainly advocacy is an important function that we could perform, and trying to help these various people. Deanna is a good example. Document their need as part of that advocacy process. So anyway, something to think about. But I thought that was a very useful discussion, and Andrew, thanks for setting that up. That was helpful, and it certainly, I think, got us started off in that area in a very positive way. So that was good.
Stan, I think you bring up a good point, and it's sort of the opportunity and the challenge in the same way, which is, how to run with it in the next step. So maybe something for us to consider is sort of, recommendations, right? We've come up with this way of ranking them, but maybe we start thinking about having some sort of a parallel to that, or a bookend to that, about what would be needed to potentially implement this. Not necessarily as firm direction, but to give some idea of perspective. And again, that might be a way to help quantitate some of the ranking, but also give direction for implementation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does. We certainly want to be helpful, and we want to, do everything we can to make a useful contribution here. So I think that's good. This task is kind of an interesting one because the groups that are supposedly responsible for this task
Right.
are the police department and the fire department, not Deanna, right?
Right.
So and this is not exactly, they don't necessarily want to be in this business. They want to have somebody who has the expertise do this, like Deanna again. So that's something maybe we can help with too, in terms of a recommendation or advocacy too, is where this who ought to be doing what to move this forward. So anyway.
So Stan, one little follow-up to that though. Actually, now that Deanna is part of the police department, so that was kind of a request that she made and they made jointly, is that she become formally part of the police department. At least in this case, you do have that connection here, but I get your point.
Yeah. Anyway, so again, this is Meredith. I would say this is certainly a strategy in progress, and we have more to do here, more discussions that will be required to figure something out. So we'll let you know as that unfolds. The other strategy that we had picked was about technology. We had Meredith and I had a discussion about the importance that technology has taken on, internet access and all of that, in the past 6-8 months, and how we wanted to move that further up the list to try to see if we could do something with that. It turned out that I guess right at about the same time we changed IT directors, so maybe it wasn't a perfect time to sort of start that process, but maybe the next couple of weeks we can try to set up a meeting with a new IT director and have that initial discussion about, you know, what do they think and how we can help them. So, and Andrew, maybe you can help us facilitate that initial meeting or discussion or whatever. That would be good.
Sure.
Okay. So that's it for public facilities.
I'm very excited for that one. I was able to go to the end of my street and get 5G cell service. So I'm like, hey, keep it coming down the street. It's very exciting.
Really? Really?
Oh yeah, that's good
Wow.
stuff. I was surprised. I'm like, oh, well, Merrimack College, not that. But.
Right.
All right.
Hmm.
All right, so it gets us through public facilities and services that we've got open spaces and transportation. Anyone?
Draw straws. Huh?
Yeah. Well, this is Sean. I guess I'll draw the short straw. Holly, please jump in, okay?
Happy to do so. Sorry, you just beat me to it.
Yep. Well, I think we both waited 5 seconds to see who would step back. But anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, busted.
So we did meet, Gene and Andrew, Holly, and I met with Rick Gorman. We discussed first the fields in town and the needs. And, one question Holly had was, in prioritizing fields, how do we account for what's already in motion? And that's what's going on over at the middle school. As you guys know, they're redoing that entire facility over there. From what I understand, it's in litigation because of some issues with neighbors. So they don't quite know when it's going to be done. But at the same time, the town has lost the Lucent fields because of the Amazon deal. And the baseball field at the high school is in a lot of disrepair. And Grogan has just recently been refinished. So there's been a lot of activity going on in that regard. And I think what it comes down to is there's a lot of temporary needs for fields. I mean, significantly. But from what I understand, everybody is very confident that the rec fields are going to be completed over at the middle school. They're going to be multiple purpose fields. So they'll be able to use for soccer, for football, as well as lacrosse. Baseball's got a little different of a setup, especially for a 90-degree baseball field, but I think there'll be some accommodations for baseball there as well. There was some discussion about where there are opportunities for other fields in town, and I know Barker's Farm came up, and this may coincide a little bit with, I think it was the economic development aspect, and trying to get a list of influential large property owners in town and try to have a dialogue with them, at least get a list and then get a dialogue so the town has opportunities to inquire into properties before they come out for sale. So that would be something, there would be a little crossover in that respect. But I think once the fields are done at the middle school, there's still going to be some need for at least one multi-purpose field as well as a baseball field. Now, having said all that, fields aren't our number 1 or 2 priority, but because of Rick's position, we did get a lot of, and the importance we recognize in town for this stuff, we did get a lot of feedback, and we do see some good things happening in the future there. Concerning the youth center, and this is where I'll let Holly certainly jump in, there was some discussion about the 4,000 square foot addition that's proposed, as well as trying to maybe make an inquiry on the lodge that's almost adjacent to it and see what opportunities are there. So I'll let you take it from there, Holly.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So basically, as you all know, Rick has been running the youth center for 33 years, and the building is about 20 years old, give or take a little bit there. And, as the town has grown, so have the needs of the youth center itself. And if you go there on any given day, it is packed to the gills with kids, so which is all good stuff, but they need to expand. So I believe that they are in the process right now of getting an architect in place to draw up plans to expand their existing footprint. So it wouldn't be a complete remodel. They would just kind of build off the back of it and have an architect help them do that. So that is the phase that they're in. So we've identified it as one of our top priorities in this category and the wheels are already turning for this, I would say, at the town level to get this done. As Sean mentioned, there was some discussion about adjacent facilities. I call it the Textile Museum, but I think I'm dating myself now because I don't think it's been the Textile Museum for some time. But we all know the museum along the common as one possibility. I know that Doc Atwood's property was also brought up before as a possibility. And Jean had also mentioned in our call with the lodge. I didn't even know it was called the lodge, Jean. I just know it is the pancake place that sits on the opposite side of the parking lot from the youth center, which would obviously be, out of all the separate structures, the most desirable because they share a parking lot pretty much. So that Rick and Jean were going to touch base, and I believe Andrew were going to touch base about what are the real possibilities of using that space, that building, or acquiring that building versus the expansion. But either way, I think it's been identified by both the town and this committee as a priority and is in the works. I think the wheels are already starting to turn for this project for it to be done in the short term rather than the long term. So,
Holly, did anything talk about the piece of vacant land that's right behind the Masonic Lodge? Behind the brick store in the Masonic Lodge, there's a vacant lot there.
Nobody mentioned, I didn't know that was a vacant lot. I know, were there solar panels? Are there solar panels or something right beyond the wetlands that are there? That I think goes to the people's property in Andover Street?
Dan Leary's house has some solar panels, but there's like an L-shaped lot there that's owned by the Historical Society. That's open space. And I wonder if they would be interested in selling that to the town for the youth center, or...
So I don't know if it's buildable though, given its proximity to the wetlands. That would be my guess. Because I think from an open space perspective, I think with the fields and everything, I don't think they're looking for open space. I think they're looking for space to either build or renovate. So like Doc Atwood on the backside of Drummond would be something they would renovate and use, or the lodge.
So Holly, I could be wrong, but I think Rick made a very brief reference to the land behind that. In the past, it seemed to be a no-go, that not really a possibility. He thought the sentiment for that may have changed somewhat recently, but it was an extremely brief sentence. So I'm aware of that parcel behind there. It's under Central Realty Trust for the ownership. And it's about 2 acres. So it's a pretty significant piece. I think wetlands do come into play. Like I said, I think Rick made a very brief reference, but the addition was more where he was focusing on, and then the potential for if another property could be purchased that with sharing of that parking lot. He certainly looked favorable upon that, but that's really early stages. And I will give the caveat that, I preface that with I might be out of my lane here by even making the suggestion, but if we're going to put an addition on like that, I think it's worth exploring.
Well, what I would add to that, as you know, Jean, the Center Realty Trust changed its set of trustees last year, and I think the new trustees may have a different attitude about repurposing land. As long as it's not, as long as you're not going to build a house on it or something. I mean, it's like as long as it sort of sticks with its, current use in one form or another, they might be more open to that. So I think, I don't know who would approach them, but it might be worth talking to them about what they might think about change of ownership of that parcel of land.
So maybe when we circle back with Rick, as Holly indicated, he'd like to talk to us a little bit further. We can ask him about that. Because like I said, when he made that brief reference, I think he was referring to that parcel, but we didn't really get into detail. So we'll discuss that with him.
Yeah, I think it's worth asking the question again, because I think previously, I think you were right, Gene. There was no interest at all in divesting that property from Center Realty Trust, but that thought may have changed. So
Yeah, And not that I add this, not that I have any additional knowledge, but just full disclosure, I'm on the board of the Historical Society as well. So I do think there's worth a conversation there. Not that I have any more information, but to put it out there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anything else for
Yeah.
open space and recreation?
The other thing I would add is, although there's only been one Concom meeting since at least I've been with you guys, and I think it was before we started this assignment, but I did reach out informally via email to some of the Concom members concerning the rail trail and where there might be opportunities, and I did get a lot of feedback. It's obviously, from their perspective, a very popular item to do in town. It's obviously not the first time it's been proposed, but I did get a lot of good ideas as far as what land is available and what land isn't available. One of the members sent along to me the conceptual plan for the open space recreation plan from 2000 that I have here in front of me. And they did lay out a rail trail on that. It went pretty much from the Middleton border all the way to the mill, maybe even a little further. But in all honesty, a lot of that is private property at this point, so it may be tough to carve out. But there have been informal discussions, and I haven't even had a chance to get Holly up to speed on it because we were really that informal with some of those folks.
I think as you all get more into those discussions, somebody you might want to talk to is the president of the Friends of North Andover Trails, Glenn Aspelay.
Absolutely.
Glenn Aspelay. Yes,
absolutely.
He's the president of Friends of FONAT, Friends of North Andover Trails.
Yep.
He had also done a conceptual design or presentation of a rail trail that would go from at least Stevens Pond to Blue Ridge Road near J&M's.
Yep.
And a rail trail, in his opinion, you might be able to get a rail trail at least that far. So you might want to touch base with him and sort of see what his prior work looked like and see if that would be useful for you all.
Yes, excellent, Stan. That was the one consistent thought from everybody was coordinating with the Friends of North Andover, not specifically Glenn, but just them in general. But yeah, it's great to know that he's already done that legwork, and we'd certainly rely on him.
Yeah, he had looked at the ownership of everything along the right of way from Stevens Pond, like Stevens Street, all the way to the Middleton line, and I think his conclusion was, you're absolutely right. Once you get way down on Salem Street, Granville Lane, and all of that, a lot of that property was given to the homeowners. So it's probably would get real complicated the further south you go. But at least you could have. It seemed to me his presentation indicated you could probably do something, get 2 or 3 miles done maybe. So.
Excellent. We will touch base with them.
Okay.
All right. Anything else on open space?
Not that I have.
Then I think we move into our fourth, but certainly not last element of transportation. How did those conversations go?
John, will you carry the ball for us here based on your expertise?
Okay. All right. So earlier this morning, as I said, Meredith, Jay, Andrew, and Gene were all involved in a conversation with John Bergazzi and Jim Sanford from the DPW. So prior to that, backing up a bit to the last meeting we held, we amongst our subgroup basically came up, rather than identify particular goals to prioritize, we basically identified 2 overarching themes in which a bunch of elements applied. One was an emphasis on greater multimodal connectivity in town, particularly non-vehicular, as in bicycle and pedestrian. And then the second goal was identifying and securing funding from available resources to implement that. So in keeping with that, going over the elements, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here, but basically everything is in process. The biggest one is the town has yet to adopt a formal complete streets program, and until we do, that's a funding mechanism that remains out of reach to implement future projects, some future projects. We had identified the issue of needing to gather out country and places on the wings. And the town at this point is, if they're looking to do projects to increase connectivity, they're focused on the schools, downtown, areas of, prioritizing areas where there's going to be maximal foot traffic and pedestrian traffic. So it's in process. There's definitely a will from the vested parties, but until we actually have something formally adopted, we can't write that one off as complete yet. Likewise, relative to the funding, there's a couple of goals. Community Preservation Act funding, in the process, as they come. The big one is working with the Mass Valley Planning Commission and MassDOT for funding projects. Obviously, as we're already doing funded projects through them, including the one at Mass Ave and 125 that was recently completed. So those so I guess you could say to continue the practice of working with them, in a way, we have completed that goal. If you want to get into the minutiae relative to the funding of safe routes to school infrastructure improvements, it's something we're currently doing, and should continue to do in the future. So I don't know if you quantify that as completed or not. But that's basically where everything's, it's trending in the correct direction. But to be able to give it an actual check mark, I'm not sure if we can do that just yet.
But say again, John, you said there was something that the town would have to do or enact to get funding. What was that? Was that the safe?
Right. So there's the Complete Streets program, which is done by MassDOT, Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
And the long story short is towns formally adopt a written. They actually codify that the town, when it comes to infrastructure improvements, will consider add bike lanes, sidewalks, full accommodation, ADA, American Disabilities Acts. So you get all your ramps and whatnot. But you commit to fully adhering to those design standards in all your projects moving forward. And once it's codified and on file with the state, that opens up a potential source of funding for future projects that fit in with those design ideals. So a lot of towns and municipalities in the state have already done it. There's different tiers. As it was explained to me, we haven't adopted one yet. So so there's potential there for us, but it's kind of, if you want to tap that resource, it's imperative to have that adopted. And again, Andrew, you can fill in as if I missed anything there.
John,
No, you covered it, John. You covered it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, George.
I'm sorry, I have a question. What did you call that, John? This is the Mass DOT what program?
Complete Streets.
Complete Streets, and so that the town has to codify a complete street plan?
A policy.
Yeah, policy.
policy?
Yep.
It's basically, it's, and Dan can speak more to it actually. Dan had done a lot of research on sort of the process from start to finish on how we needed to go forward. Dan, do you want to just do a quick primer on complete streets and where we're at?
Yep. So we drafted a policy and are working on building consensus around it between planning, community development, DPW, and Melissa's looking at it right now. The policy doesn't require that you incorporate all those complete streets elements into streets you build, that you consider those design elements when you are doing new capital projects. So it's not a requirement, it's more like a commitment to the principle. And then after that, you have to do a prioritization plan. So you don't get the construction funding right away. You have to follow this process of determining what are our priority street projects. And then you can do another round where you apply for construction funding. And then you can apply for that each year, I believe. There's two opportunities to do it each year. You might be able to do it twice a year, but I definitely know you can reapply every year. And that's that.
So, I mean, in summary, it's just another bucket of funding that we can gain access to if we want to, implement some of these transportation infrastructure, pedestrian safety, bike safety improvements. And, to Dan's point, we don't have to broadly apply it all across North Andover. We can pick and choose specific areas where it's most appropriate. So like, for instance, right now, just connecting this to another strategy we've discussed at length, the master plan, the downtown improvement master plan, we want to do all these streetscape infrastructure improvements. They're going to require a complete streets approach, most likely, where a complete streets approach would be appropriate because you're going to have people going through the downtown that are obviously going to be pedestrians, single occupancy vehicles. There's a bus line that runs through downtown, and we might want to make the downtown a little more bike friendly as well. So when considering all those modes of transit or transportation, we could tap into complete streets funding, prioritize a project to improve the downtown, certain areas of the downtown Main Street, and be able to tap into complete streets funding to do that. So it'll be definitely useful in the future.
Dan, what do we have to do to get the policy approved? Who approves it?
It's the selectmen.
Okay.
Or select board. Yeah, that's it.
So it's not a town meeting thing.
Nope.
I asked John Borghese how the Columbia Gas Restoration Fund figured into us getting streets done with all of the design ideals that Complete Streets calls into play. And he said, well, that's a bit of a problem because they had estimated that it would be $1 million per mile. And what they got from the fund was 750,000 per mile. So that was obviously going to leave out a number of these design ideals as far as the Columbia reconstruction of North Andover streets was concerned.
And piggybacking off of that a bit, so the Columbia gas settlement was good in the fact that we got a bunch of money to do improvements on those affected areas. The problem being is there's so many affected areas that a lot of the town's resources from the DPW standpoint have been allocated to that, which so any projects that may have been in the pipeline, no pun intended, but anything that may have been in the pipeline prior to the gas explosion kind of got put by the wayside just because we don't have the resources to, at least this is how I understood it, is basically all the attention's being paid to the gas settlement areas right now. And within those areas, yes, would they like to do sidewalks with granite curbing? Yes, but as Jay mentioned, they funding dictates, or lack of funding dictates that you got to strip out certain items. So, they try to stretch that as best as they can. So you're a little bit caught up in the things. So, while there is a will, there's not necessarily a way right now. Who knows within 1 or 2 years where we stand once those items have been addressed, and can we get back to where, projects that we had lined up, can we get back to those? And do they need to be tweaked, or can additional funding be applied to those to get them in line with complete streets thinking, not necessarily a policy that's been formally adopted, but can we get in that direction?
So
And
John,
just-
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly, go ahead.
So just would it be in our kind of, would you suggest, or think it's kind of in our lane, to back to where Stan was talking earlier about me and wanting to make sure we're adding value, that if this is the complete streets policy, is this something in our report to the selectmen we should encourage them to approve, or is that untimely, unnecessary? Would that be a good thing? I mean,
so if it was in our purview to make a suggestion, I would advocate that we do, at least in our notes, as a group, say that we encourage the Board of Selectmen to get it, to basically, long story short, get it done and get
Yeah,
it done as soon as possible.
Unless anyone disagree, I think that because we're supposed to be advising them, and if we're seeing that this would be a huge plus and to align to the master plan, I think that would be something that would be appropriate for us to put into this quarter's report, right?
That's the way that most transportation projects in the state are going. MassDOT dictates it basically on all their projects at this point. So you'll see that as part of the 114 improvements. So it's in our collective best interest to have it adopted.
I would like to add, one of the reasons I asked John that question was, I specifically went after the design ideal of granite curbing, and said, look at, here's a feature that adds significant value, appearance, safety in every way to our streets. And his explanation was, as John just pointed out, we didn't have the money to do that. And so I would see our position here as having the potential to say to the powers that be, listen, this particular design ideal is really, truly important to us in the town of North Andover. And we think that you should find the resources as you finish these streets to put curbing in for all the right reasons. Not the least of which is how it beautifies the neighborhoods, but it certainly does a lot more than that. So that was just one element that I think we could advocate for that would improve significantly the appearance and the safety of our streets.
Well, just from a rule of thumb, anytime you have a sidewalk that abuts a roadway, from a design standpoint, you want a vertical separation.
Right.
And that's granite. Granite gives you both vertical separation. It gives you something that stands up to plows, which asphalt curb does not.
Right.
So, you put asphalt in, you hit it with a plow, and now you're replacing it. You put curb in, it gets hit with a plow, it's going to stay there. So so it's a little more money up front, but down the line, is it that much more because you have to replace broken, damaged areas? Versus as we not to get lost in the weeds here, versus a berm, which is a much flatter profile that a car can easily run over. That doesn't give you a factor of safety when you have adjacent pedestrians. So
and we did have a conversation about how if it was economical, that we would seek to have granite curbing installed. And for instance, we just received over $200,000 to replace a 1,100 linear foot portion of sidewalk on Main Street through the MassDOT Shared Streets and Spaces program. And in that spec, we said we wanted to install granite curbing. And because the grant was for, I think, up to $300,000, and we were able to identify a stretch of sidewalk that could accommodate being able to install, concrete sidewalk with granite curbing within that project budget. That is the intent. So where it makes sense and where we can do it, I think is what DP DPW is going to try to do. Sorry if you're hearing children in the background here.
And just to, in what Andrew just mentioned, there are additional funding resources. So he mentioned the shared streets program through MassDOT. I'm actually doing 2 of those programs in Drake right now. And those are like plug and play, easy. It's here's cash, go build it right away. Literally it has time constraints. But if you have projects in the pipeline, so for instance, I have a corridor in Drake that I've been working on as on a master plan. We got funding for basically allows us to implement that project in phases rather than waiting down the line for one big cash, one big funding agreement. We can, because we have the design in place, we can say, all right, we're going to build this stretch from this road to this road. And then if we get more money along the line, we're ready to go. We have the next road here. So we just finished one program that finished up in December. We just got the allocation for more money for another phase, which has to be completed by May. So there are funding mechanisms available to the town outside of complete streets. But if you have that thought, if the town has the wherewithal to have these projects in mind, they're ready to go.
Was there any discussion about deferring some of the maintenance we already have in our street maintenance program to add to the Columbia Gas funding to get back up to $1 million a mile to do it the right way?
I'll defer to Andrew on that.
No, we didn't discuss that specifically.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were privy to any of that, but I would imagine that the monies that have been issued for that as part of the settlement are final, and really the plans that have been created off of that are pretty much set at this point.
But I think the real 50,000 foot takeaway for me on the whole transportation element piece is just, there's a whole heck of a lot to do. We all know that. And I think every municipality in the Commonwealth can say that they have so much to do in terms of improving infrastructure. I mean, we all know at a federal level, like, infrastructure is a bugaboo. It's a problem. We're well behind on, getting more sidewalks, maintaining our roads, making it easier to travel from place to place. But I think, given our size, I think we punch above our weight. I think we're one of a small collection of cities or towns that has, 2 MassWorks funded infrastructure projects that we got, and although it's born out of an unfortunate situation, we're fortunate to have the Columbia Gas funds to do some work to reconstruct those areas and improve them. And then, we're continuing to try to expand upon those tools by going out, getting a complete streets policy in place to go after complete streets money, and to, just like I just mentioned before, going after grants as they come up, like the MassDOT Shared Streets and Spaces program. So I think a lot's being done on the front in general, even though there's going to continually be work to be done.
Just to add to that, I may have misheard it, but what I believe John referenced was, in addition to the Columbia Gas funds, he's supplementing some areas with the sidewalk fund that they have in order to get it done right. And so he referenced East Water Street, Russell Street, and Park Street as being 3 streets where they kind of did more than they anticipated with the gas funds only. So I think they are taking into consideration where they can improve beyond what they first envisioned. So.
That makes sense. Okay.
All right. Anything else on transportation?
I think that covers it.
All right.
And Jay, if you have anything else that I missed.
I just wanted to add, I came away from the meeting with a sense of sidewalks everywhere. There's studies going on. The way John described it was consider public buildings in a 2-mile zone. And how can we get students and how can we get citizens to public buildings safely? And so that 2-mile zone was being looked at to complete sidewalks that are half done or don't quite extend as far as they could be. They could, and all of that was in progress, as John has pointed out, and that was very encouraging to me.
And Kelly, I would just add that anything you can do to prioritize the complete streets, I think is to all of our advantage, because I think you'll be able to point to numerous goals around pedestrian safety and bike lanes and connectivity, that complete streets alone, if we start to focus a little bit more, and like we said, we have to give consideration to the project to be complete streets. Not necessarily will we get it 100% of the time, but I think you can point to a lot of goals in your justification for prioritizing it.
Okay. So it sounds like we're integrated and we'll at the next meeting, obviously, review and approve the consent to the report before we send it. But John, it'd be great if you had anything in terms of what we should, how should we phrase the kind of encouragement or advising statement to the selectmen to approve the complete streets and what that does, what strategies that ties it to, and we can put that in there as part of the report.
Okay.
It'll be our first recommendation to the selectmen and planning board, right? Like that's, and if we show what that ties to and what the positive there, I think that's great.
Yeah, I can craft something up for that.
Great.
All right, so that's the 4 elements that we've had meetings for. So there's 3 remaining elements: housing, economic development, and historical.
Right.
I know I can speak for housing. And I may have missed an email because it seems to be what I'm doing a lot lately. Andrew, are you trying to facilitate those meetings, or do we owe you things on those?
So, okay, and that is something I wanted to address because obviously I was blitzing trying to get some of these meetings set up during the holidays, before this meeting, and so it ended up being a little too much to get everybody up and running with their respective meetings. On housing, I think that so in looking back at the strategies that were prioritized, and bear with me, I'm pulling them up myself. So I think that on strategy number 10, which is review recommendations from the Merrimack Valley Regional Housing Plan for consistency with master plan, and then utilize CPA and housing trust funds to offset housing costs, and then continue to review impact of housing development. I think that at least for 1 or 2 of those, it might be appropriate to meet with either or both the Affordable Housing Trust as a body, or have like 1 or 2 representatives of the subgroup meet with them as a body, as well as with maybe the CPC to sort of discuss. And of course, George is our representative from the Affordable Housing Trust, so maybe he has an opinion on this, but maybe that would be the conversation to have. Because I personally, I can't speak to some of the current efforts underway with respect to the creation of affordable housing.
Well, okay, speaking as the representative from the Affordable Housing Trust, certainly strategies number 10 and 14?
10 and 14, yeah.
Need to be brought up before the trust. The trust hasn't discussed these at all, is not aware of it as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware. And I haven't done this yet, but I was going to tell Lori that we need to get these items on the agenda and talk about it. To tell you the truth, number 10, where you compare or just check the master plan with the housing production plan, to tell you the truth, I think that's just a job for a person like myself to draft a comparison of the goals, a comparison or a contrast or whatever, and then submit it to the trust and have the trust, comment on it, make whatever comments they want to make. But then it would be a document that would be put out by the trust saying, yes, they are consistent in the following respect.
Right. So if we need to meet with the Affordable Housing Trust, do we go before their meeting, or we just kind of try to grab a couple people and have a side meeting? Just trying if we need to
So, George, I mean, you think that this needs to be a broader conversation with the Affordable Housing Trust, is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust was identified as the local government lead.
Yeah.
So they need to be informed. And right now, the rest of the trust is not informed, as far as I know.
So I think the best way to go would probably be to, have somebody engage the Affordable Housing Trust, get it on their agenda, and have maybe one or two members of the subcommittee go before them. I don't think it needs to be some big thing, and it can be just a discussion, just saying, you're part of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. You're looking at these different strategies. You're ranking and prioritizing them. This is something that we came up with. This is something we examined with respect to housing, and we want to understand better what might have already been done with respect to these specific strategies, or if we need to focus on moving them forward if not much has happened, and how do we do that, and having a collaborative conversation with them, and then reporting back in a similar fashion as has been done already with these other subcommittees. I think that would be the way to go. I don't know, Gene or Dan or anybody else, you guys have any other thoughts?
No, my recollection, George, is once the housing plan and the master plan were adopted, Laurie did have it as an agenda item and kind of went through one by one. I don't remember the results of that at the affordable housing meeting, but the regional housing plan was adopted a month or two ahead of the master plan, and there was a concerted effort to make sure they were not going to be in conflict with each other. And so there's a number of goals or strategies that overlap, certainly, but I trust that they're not in conflict, which was one of my big concerns, where we were doing both these plans at the exact same time, and the housing plan was going to be adopted first. So Laurie might remember better, George, or have the minutes from that meeting. It would have been in late 18. And I know you've done some initiatives, and they likely align with some of these goals.
Gene, I'm sorry. You just said late 18. What mean? Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Go ahead.
So 2018, in the fall when it was adopted, I think shortly after that, we put it on an agenda for the Housing Trust, just to make them aware of what goals were in there and to try to align some of their initiatives with those goals. I don't think we've done well at documenting and kind of checking them off, but I think if you bring it up on an agenda with Laurie, she'll have some recollection of this as well.
In the interest of time, unless you guys want to keep discussing the Affordable Housing Trust and CPC, which I'm happy to do. In the interest of time, maybe what I can just do is similar to how we did this before. I can just offline talk to you, Kelly, and Stan, and just say, here's what we're going to do, or here's what we suggest doing. And then we could just maneuver outside of the confines.
Absolutely. Anything, because we're not going to solve, obviously, right? We're not going to solve it here, but anything just to kind of help facilitate so we can get this next meeting on the conversation happening.
Yeah. And a couple of these other outstanding ones I think are easier. I think like economic development is really more of a conversation with myself and Gene. And I have to take another quick look at historical preservation. That might also.
Let me speak to that just for a second.
Sure.
So we picked two tasks, Holly and I, and one of those tasks, looking at it again, I think we really need to coordinate with the open space subcommittee, because it's kind of an open space issue. It's sort of like the historical component of open space. So I think we need to coordinate with the folks that are doing the open space subcommittee stuff before we do anything. And then the historical assets or historical resources master plan. I think that's a series of meetings that you could help us with, or I can probably just set up. We can probably just set those up ourselves with the various historical commissions in town to talk to them about, what they might see being in that kind of a master plan for our historical resources, and kind of get some input and feedback from them on that. So I think that's just an activity we need to think about scheduling and try to get with, the historical commission, the Machine Shop Village group, the Old Center group, maybe the historical society itself, just have some discussions with each of those groups and get some input from them on what they see, what they might think a master plan for historical resources might look like. So, anything to add to that, Holly?
No, I think that covers it. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay.
All right, so we can move forward on and we talked, what about economic development? We talked about
Other
this.
thing, I think, yeah, I think we can schedule a meeting. It would be like me, Gene, and Dan could speak to those items, and I'll set up a meeting for that.
Okay, awesome. So that will move through the rest of the 3 elements. So then we'll have worked through our our top priorities for all of the elements and know, where for those of us that pick low hanging fruit, know which ones are done versus which, be able to say which ones are, in progress, versus, recommended next steps, as John mentioned, kind of supporting, the complete streets and putting that in. Because I think then that all that information, as Stan mentioned before, if each of the element groups that met can provide him with the kind of the bullet points of the status and then any kind of additional information, he'll make sure that that information gets into our spreadsheet repository of information. Then we'll use that to create our report out with our first recommendation to the selectmen in it. And we'll obviously we'll review that and consent to that next.
And don't hesitate to send me more rather than less. I mean, if you want to just send me notes or minutes or whatever you've got, that's fine. And we'll figure something out. We'll figure out how to summarize that. So, it's going to take us a little bit to figure out how best to document what we're doing here. But don't waste a lot of time trying to summarize it for my benefit. Just send me what you've got, and we'll figure it out.
All right, and then so that kind of ties up what we've got cooking right now, and working towards the next quarterly report. Is what's next for us within each element. Stan, you and I don't think we haven't talked about this, but are we working? Should each element then Stan work through kind of our next set of priorities and just keep working down the list? What are you envisioning?
Well, it's a good question.
Right?
So I think so. Let's think about that. So we only have of the let's see, we have about 2 times 6 is 12, 13, 14 plus 7, about more than 20 priorities currently on our short list. Only one of which is done, right? So we have 20 that are all in process. What do we sort of feel like, how do we want to deal with that in process activity? Do we periodically go back and talk to the same people again, or do we have a follow-up meeting on each of those strategies, or do we just read and see what happened? How does that work all by itself? And then if we say, well, we're just going to sort of let those percolate for a while and see what happens, then we can go back to the list and try to pick from each of our areas maybe a couple more strategies that would be next and see if that works or something.
I'm thinking, and I hate saying this, I think it depends, right? Because I think in terms of when we go back to get more information, some of these are more active, right? And more near term, which it might make sense to kind of regroup, in 6 months. Other ones might be farther out where, hey, we heard about it, it's a priority or it's not. We don't add any value, right? Checking in for status doesn't add a lot of
right
value.
I think good examples are probably some of those transportation strategies, which they're doing them and it's just going to take them time to do it, and there's no reason to bug them about it. So if you know what their schedule is when it's sort of getting toward when they said it was going to be complete, call them up and say, hey, how'd it go? Did that work out for you? Do we get sidewalks or however you would do that, right? But that's just they've got a schedule and they're doing work and stuff will happen and we're
That's
not
right.
going to influence that at all.
So can I speak to it from a staff perspective real quick, Kelly?
Mhm.
So, I would say, I think there just needs to be a little time for us to settle into the priorities that have been already ranked and prioritized and put out there. So in other words, give staff an opportunity to sort of give me, Gene, and Dan an opportunity to sort of continue to track progress in some of these things and report back to you on where they are. And yeah, some of them are longer term strategies that are going to take some time to unfold, like the transportation infrastructure ones. But like, for instance, complete streets, we're actively working toward that. And so that's going to be another priority that we'll be able to bring forward as being complete or near complete very soon, and in the coming months, certainly. And then same goes for the area plan. We mentioned we're doing the area plan of Route 125. So I think there's things in motion that we can continue to update you about without having to jump to other priorities, or other priorities, because what I would hate to see happen is that we're sort of skipping around so much that we're sort of, we're stretching ourselves a little thin on trying to update everybody on, several priorities when we're trying to focus in on completing the initially prioritized strategies, if you will.
So, Andrew, just so I'm clear on this, you're talking about updating us, the committee, on activities that are ongoing on any or all of the strategies, not just the subset that we picked. Is that right?
Well, that's true too. So that's the other piece. That's and that, I didn't bring that up, but that's a good point. Is that even if there aren't strategies that are being prioritized or put to the forefront per se by this committee,
right?
There's ongoing efforts to get other priorities, or excuse me, other strategies completed or see progress on. We're continuing.
I think that would be helpful for us, so that if we're thinking about what would be our next, one or two priorities that we would that we would pick to prioritize, if you tell us that there's already work ongoing with that, maybe we wouldn't pick that. Would say, oh, no, something's already happening there, so we'll do something else. So that would be helpful, I think. Okay.
I'm sorry, Stan. So, Chris, I'm sorry, I talked over you.
Sure. The only thing I would add is, I think a little bit to Andrew's point too, is that we're also going to get feedback on this once we get it out there, hopefully. And I think that may also help us feel more comfortable in sort of figuring out, what the next steps are and sort of the synchronization of some of this. So I don't know that we have to have that all so nailed down at the moment, as appealing as it might be to try and have it all sorted. Just as a side.
Yeah.
All right. So then we stick with, for each element, the top priorities that we have. We get our report out with those priorities. So we'll have a list of 21-ish strategies that are prioritized. We'll have status on those in our report. We'll have our one recommendation around the sidewalks, or complete streets rather. Our next group probably will hear the next details on housing, economic development, and historical.
Right.
All right.
And just on the report itself, is that something that you, Kelly, and Stan are drafting, and they'll have something for the committee at the next meeting? Is that how that's going to work, or how are we doing that?
When are we supposed to submit that report to the select board?
Yeah, it's a quarterly report. There's no deadline, but the quarter has passed officially. Now that we're into 2021. So last time I think we were kind of a month out from that. From the end of the quarter. So I would say, if we meet again in early February, say, I think that's a perfectly acceptable time to then turn around and submit the report. It's a little longer than it was last time, but I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Mid-February is fine. that still works fine.
Okay. Yeah, I should have asked Chris actually, because he's going to be one of the recipients of that report.
Yeah, yeah.
Make sure,
Yeah, really.
That
Okay, we're
works.
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Does that take us? I think that takes us through. Well, was there any public comment while we're on the phone on these hot topics, Andrew?
I'll check again. No topics hot enough, unfortunately, for any public comment. So that's a negative. We'll have to spice it up next time a little more. I don't know how to do
See,
that.
there you go.
What you ask for? Careful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Be careful. Be
Very good
careful.
point.
Maybe we're lucky. Yeah.
I think we're good.
All right. If no
Okay.
one else,
Can I just ask a question? So a report has been submitted to the select board.
no, we've submitted one report.
Was that written?
Yes, it was a
Could that be distributed then to the committee? I don't think.
we can't. I don't know if it got distributed back out. We did review it. It was on our agenda. We reviewed it and voted to the consent for the whole group.
Well,
We've only done one.
I remember the discussion about what we were going to say, and I just, but I don't remember. I don't think I ever got a written report if a report was written.
Do we?
Yeah, George, we did draft the report, and to just to back up what Kelly was saying, we did put it on a past agenda when we were considering it. I think it may have been, finalized after that meeting. So there was sort of a vote to say, okay, yes, we want to submit something of this effect to the both the planning board and the Board of Selectmen. But I'll redistribute it if it's helpful to people in its final form, just so people have it.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, it was attached to the selectmen's agenda. That's kind of, I think, where that's probably where I went and got the source of it. George, to your point, I think it got emailed to me, but I took it off the select board's agenda.
Yep. And that's always posted 3 days in advance, and the same thing will happen with this one, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Yep. So at the
Okay.
next meeting, we will review the report. We'll have something drafted. Everyone will have seen it beforehand because it'll be linked to the agenda. And that, like we talked about before, that will be the chance for all of us, not so much to vote, but to consent on any of the statuses or recommendations or not of what's in the report to Selectmen and Planning Board.
Good.
All right. I think this is done for our first meeting of 2021.
All right.
Fabulous year, little snow on the ground. It is all good. It's very bright in here. My daughter's turned on all the lights. All right. Good
Can I
night.
just ask, wait, before we,
Oh, yeah, stop.
not so fast. Can we just make sure we are in agreement on our next meeting? Because I think we had been doing these meetings on Thursday. But then of course the holidays came up. There were 2 Thursday holidays. There was, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Do we want to move back to Thursday? Or do we want to stay with Monday? Yet Monday does conflict with
The select board.
Select board, exactly. Chris is one of our members, obviously. So,
we should probably like the first weekend. I like having it on a recurring theme. It's just personally it's easier. I don't know if that matters to anybody. I can do, for me, Mondays or Thursdays, barring anything unusual, work just as well. I know timing was more of an issue to allow at least John to get home. So having it later was better than earlier, right? So he's not sitting in the office this whole time. But
yeah, I'm in the office.
So we found out that it has to be, the 2 target times are 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, right?
Right.
You can't have it at 6. That's no good. That's a non-starter. So we got to either pick 5 or 7, right?
Yeah. 5's good.
Yep.
So, okay.
5's good.
School committee is on February 4th. So I'm assuming we don't want to get involved with that one.
Well, I mean, if we did 5, we could be, and it went like this, would be done by 7, right?
yes, we could do. They'd want us to probably wrap by 6:30, so we're probably going a little over. They'd want us to do, but yes, if we could wrap it by 6:30, if we started at 5. I know, John, is that okay with you if we started at 5 on Thursday the 4th?
Not ideal, but if that's what works for the group, I can do it.
Well, can we move on to different? There's got to be a way that we can work this. So
I mean, Mondays at 5 or Thursdays at 7. I mean, but yeah,
Those are my two votes. I'm with John. I've got the same scheduling scenarios.
Well,
for
let's
different reasons.
let's do Monday at 5 then.
Yeah, Monday at 5.
so that you guys prefer that? All right, then that
Yeah.
works. If that's your
So
preference, it works for me.
Okay, so would you guys rather do Monday the 1st? So just to keep it consistent with this,
That's fine with me.
first Monday, or did you want to?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
No?
count. Yeah.
So are we saying the first Monday of the month at what 7 o'clock did you say?
5.
First Monday of the month at 5 o'clock will be our normal meeting time?
Well, but Chris, is this going to be okay with you? I don't want to put you on a marathon evening for you if you're going to have meetings on Mondays.
Well, listen, if it works for the group, it works for the group. The only thing is we might have an executive session at some point. If this is what works best for the group, it works best for the group. I'll manage. There are bigger hardships in life.
And then we can always adjust, right? Let's shoot for that, right? Monday is at 5. And then if because almost everyone's on different committees. And if there's a conflict because, we're coming up to something, then we adjust if we need to.
Yeah, because we can always push it a week Monday to get away from your meeting, Chris.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's in every other.
If
so-
there was if you were going to have some critical meeting and there was going to be a big conflict, we could just push it one Monday past and it'd be good, right? So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, let's give it a roll.
Okay. Can I move to adjourn now, Kelly?
Please do.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, Jay. I'll take a roll call real quick. Stan,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Holly,
Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Kelly. Yes, I think I hit everybody.
Yep.
So I
very
believe
good.
we are adjourned. Happy New Year,
Thank
everyone.
you.